Who is your favorite architect?
He is.
He stole my line. My favorite color is white. I'm a Taurus. I love Al's work, and I love the Met Galleries the best. But my second favorite architect is a dead Frenchman, and I can't remember his name. He lived sometime in the 18th century.
Well, I guess one of the initial questions is how were you initially introduced to classical architecture? And was it through architecture school? I'm assuming not. Were there mentors, or was it just walking through the streets of Philadelphia? Or?
Can I?
Yes.
Okay for me to start?
Was
that I have written over and over and over again so often that I'm tired of hearing myself say it, that I was once a happy modernist. I was completely devoted to the Bauhaus, and I studied with Bauhaus masters. My sister did earlier with Maholinage, and then I've studied eventually with Joseph Albers, the 2D course, the 3D course, the color course. And I'm here in Pennsylvania because Lou Kahn was at Yale when I was there, and he was called over here, and Kahn was the great spiritual guide for all kinds of architects of different persuasions, but we all sort of looked to Lou. So somewhere in the 70s, a lot of us about more or less the same age. John is much younger than I am, I want you to know.
But I've had a hard life, which explains why he looks better.
We had somebody devised a competition to replace one of the Fairmount Park.
Joel Levinson and I.
Yeah, okay. The program was that suppose this mansion is blown away, you know, how would you replace it? At that point, I was trying to be a kind of a bridge between the beautiful architecture of the past and the silly architecture of the present, and I was devoted. I never submitted anything to that because I was trying so hard to make a transitional piece of work. But I did attend the showing. There were no prizes given, but there was a big exhibit in where was that?
The Marketplace.
Marketplace, first, yeah. And I looked at a lot of friends of mine doing more or less indifferent work, but interesting. We were all very critical of each other at that point. And I came to one panel that I couldn't believe the guy was serious, because it was a beautiful Beaux-Arts watercolor rendering of a kind of an 18th century replacement for this gorgeous 18th century house. And I thought, who is that guy? What is he up to? And is he serious? And turned out to be John Blatteau, whom I did not, I think, know at that point. Really. But I thought, oh my God, and I talked to people, what do you think of that? Well, everybody was impressed, but a lot of people were kind of, oh, for God's sake, you know, what's he doing that kind of thing for? But that was honestly the consciousness breakthrough that he was entirely serious. That's what he wanted to do. Now, and we met and we talked, but he is the number, maybe not the number one in magnitude, but absolutely the first guy that turned my head around.
The difference between us, I think, is that I was at Penn, and Penn, I had a couple of experiences, if you want to hear them. I'll make them brief so they're not too boring. I went to Penn, the first project they gave was a row house. So I was the most naive guy you can imagine going to these Ivy League school. Graduate school, we're supposed to do a row house. I come from row house, I live in a row house. I used to live in row houses, that's where I was raised, blah, blah, blah. I do a row house. They hated it. The guy who won the prize was the guy who did, he did it on the intersection up in West Philly, and he built stair towers in each of the four corners, and he bridged the street with apartments. And then, you know, the critics got down, looked at the model, and I'm over here with a row house, you know. So I learned, you know, that I was naive about it, but I also was clever enough to know how to play the game at Penn, so that worked. The big advantage I had further on in my career there was that Lou Kahn was the dominant guy. At least there were like two tracks. There was Lou Kahn, and then there was other people that weren't so important. And the advantage that I had as a student with Lou Kahn was that you didn't put a line on the page until you had a philosophical reason behind it. So there was no pressure to perform, there was no pressure to have style. There was hardly any pressure to participate in the class because Kahn really was more about him than he was about the students. So I spent my graduate school in the library, and I really knew every book in the library where they were. And I loved the books that the books that I love I found at that time. It was the great 18th century French books, Craft, as a survey of all the beautiful buildings in Paris. He did another one, the beautiful houses in the suburbs of Paris. Degodet did the survey of the monuments in Rome. So all of these books I knew. And then I graduate from Cannes, make a big tour of Europe. I come back, I get a bad job for $5 an hour, and I go to a Freeman's auction house here, and I buy 3 of what I consider to be the best books of the 19th century. The 2 Laterrois, the buildings of modern Rome, and the Vatican and St. Peter's. And I also got Durand.